Many thanks, ASG Naveed Hanif and the UNDESA team for inviting me to provide some thoughts at this important event. My respect to the valuable thoughts already shared by USG Rabab Fatima, Ambassador Eminence Agnes Chimbri Molande, and Chris Sharrock, VP at Microsoft. I join you as the chair of the Force for Good Foundation and the CEO of an investment firm, Greater Pacific Capital. As the chair of the foundation, we understand what the macro challenges that we face in meeting the SDG goals. And we analyze that very thoroughly, involving some of the largest institutions across the world. As the CEO of an investment firm, we understand the on-the-ground reality as an investor in emerging markets. We also see that what it takes for large investment flows to go to some countries and not to others. And we've seen that over a very long period. From the macro perspective, we see how much capital there is, and there is $450 trillion of gross liquid assets and nearly $100 trillion of annual GDP. So the conditions you would have thought are such that the capital is there. If the conditions were met, that capital flow. But for some reason, the capital doesn't flow. And in our world today, it's easier to fund a mission for Mars than to fund education or housing or ending poverty and hunger. So something isn't quite working. And what is that? And I'd like to explore that a little bit because I think it's important to the question that you're facing. The SDGs today, I think, and this is the core reason, are seen as worthy causes rather than authentic business opportunities, which makes more than, or some of, the 99% of the world's capital that is invested for profit almost inaccessible to the SDGs. And I think herein lies the big challenge. From a micro perspective, the risk is often more important to investors than the return. And in that regard, you know what the risks are because you face them every day and you get that feedback for your business cases. I'll highlight a few of them nonetheless. Currency risk is one of those. The ability to meet profit targets and to repatriate profits, take into account regulatory regimes, tax regimes, and the transparency of those is, of course, another one. The timing risk, the execution risk, the exit risk ultimately too, and increasingly the ESG risk. So as ESG becomes more and more rigorous and the compliance is more and more required, this filters out many, many opportunities that might exist because they don't meet the ESG requirements. And so I encourage you to also look at ESG and see how you meet those requirements too. These are, of course, a combination of government and business operator level risk, and both need to be addressed. Each of these risks drives up the return requirement until it becomes easier to invest in US equities or European equities than it is in some of the places that need the money. However, the solutions that are the most attractive are those that combine tech and make it cheaper to address large populations and to drive mass inclusion. Also in sectors that have very strong multiples and deliver big returns, and instruments that structure for these potential risks and protect investors for those risks. And all of this is possible. I'm sure today you have many exciting opportunities to walk us through. And I encourage you as you look at those opportunities, you present those, to think about the risk alongside the return and how you would mitigate some of those risks. For investors across the world, of course, the most attractive sectors in the world are still education and healthcare and tech and housing and innovative solutions for energy and climate change and logistics and supply chain that deliver food and other essential items all over the world. And these are the requirements of the global south. And the least developed countries need those things. So you would have thought, given they're the most attractive, there must be a way to find the solutions. The combination of technology, certainly two solutions, allows profitability to be squeezed out where it might not have been before, and that is very important. I would add something else to this, which is given the size of the challenge, and we've analyzed what the SDGs need, and previous assumptions were that it needed about $40 or $50 trillion more of capital. Our analysis suggests that given inflation, given the pandemic, given the migration and poverty that has happened, and the migration from climate change and crises in many parts of the world, that actually that number is substantially bigger. We estimate it's closer to $130 to $140 trillion. And if it's that much out of $450 trillion, that's too much that won't be allocated without two things at least happening. One is systemic change, And the second is business cases that can be funded. And so that micro work on funding and making them fundable, of course, needs to happen. And, we all have a big hope that the good work of the development finance corporations of the world will provide some of the solutions. But the numbers I've just outlined are too big. There is not enough capital in the DFCs to do that. And so it does matter that actually the systemic causes and the business cases are both solved for. And so with that in mind, speaking to ASG Naveed Hanif, we have offered that we would look at business cases that you have, and they would send us a selection to look at. And that will give us an idea as to what can we do about the business cases, and are there broader solutions that might be more systemic or otherwise that might actually help. And we'd be delighted to invest that time to see if we can help with this, as somebody who really cares about this topic. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me, and best wishes for this conference.